Hello, everyone. It's great to be here and welcome you all to the first day of DAM Industry Week. As Millie mentioned, we're here to talk about CPG and retail today. I'm honored to be your chair. There are so many wonderful speakers today. And this is an industry very close to my heart. I've probably spent about half my time over the last 20 years working in DAM and content management, working with large CPG organizations. So many of the speakers that are going to be part of the agenda today, I've known for a long time, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them. And I know that you're going to benefit a great deal from what they have to say. So just to give you a few administrative tips and background, you've obviously been successful in logging into the platform, so that's good. And you might be just attending today, not necessarily as a CPG practitioner, but as someone who's just interested in DAM, and you might be attending all of the next 5 days. So there are 5 days of sessions this week. Tomorrow is media entertainment. That'll be followed by education on Wednesday, financial services and insurance on Thursday, and then finally healthcare on Friday. To see an agenda for each day or add a session to your calendar, you can click on the dates on the left-hand side of your agenda screen. And don't forget to click on the exhibition tab throughout the event to check out sponsor booths. And of course, you'll have a chance to win great prizes. I'm not even sure what those great prizes are. How about end of lockdown and end of the pandemic? That would be the #1 prize, wouldn't it? Also, be sure to take a look at the competitions tab, where you can win free access to one of the Henry Stewart online educational courses, several of which I teach and many other wonderful people teach. So definitely check that out. You can also go to the community tab, where you can post questions for attendees. And of course, during the sessions, please, please, please make sure you ask questions. This is, of course, your opportunity to take advantage of all the amazing experts we have on here today. You can use the panel on the right-hand side of the screen. And at any point, if you need assistance from anyone on the Henry Stewart team, there's a little bubble icon on the bottom right, where you should be able to chat with the chat bot, although I can assure you there's a real person behind that chat bot. So I'm going to kick off and talk a little bit about the themes and sort of happenings that I see in CPG and retail. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Teresa Regley. I hope I have already met most of you over the many years that I've been involved with Henry Stewart events. And I have worked in DAM for going on 18 years now. And I've been working in broader content management for about 25 years. So when it comes to CPG and retail, what am I seeing lately? And I'll present some of these themes, as I know many of the speakers are going to touch on them today. I was trying to think of some of my favorite brand stories, because I think a lot about brand marketing and brand stories. And as I was thinking about this over the weekend, I started thinking about Roger Federer, because I'm based in London, and one of my favorite annual things to do has always been going to Wimbledon. And any year that I couldn't manage to get a ticket through usual channels, I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I would go and try to be one of the 500 people that they let in, just waiting in a queue from overnight or early in the morning. So I'm a big tennis fan, but I was thinking specifically about Roger Federer and what he represents to so many brands. When it comes to Nike or Wilson or Uniqlo and all these different sponsors that he has. But I think if I wanted to kind of come up with the most iconic brand that he represents, it actually has perhaps nothing to do with tennis. It has to do with what he wears when he walks off the court, and what you see him wearing anytime he's off the court. And perhaps from some of these pictures, you might notice what he has around his wrist. Is of course one of the most iconic global brands in the world for luxury. It is his Rolex watch. And of course, here's one of the most successful sports people ever, considered, arguably the greatest of all time in his sport. And of course, even his wife wears a beautiful Rolex. So it's not just the story that he represents, it's also this thematic idea that there is a crown for every achievement. Brands have very much become instruments for storytelling. And so much of what we do in digital asset management is bringing together the elements of the story for a brand. So this particular ad that I found, describing Roger Federer as the master of the court and the Grand Slam collector and the longest consecutive streak at world #1, role model, mentor, phenomenon, all these superlatives. It's really about the watch, isn't it? Right? It's really about the watch. So as we think about what we do every day, managing brands, what we want to do when it comes to inspiring people to buy our products, it all has to do with telling a story. And I've recently, about 6 months ago, actually read this book, Storynomics. Hopefully you can see that there on the camera. And if you're interested more in learning more and sort of thinking about the science of brand storytelling, I highly recommend this book. And it might inspire you a little bit as you manage assets on a day-to-day basis, as you're going through all these technical challenges that you might have in digital asset management or marketing challenges that you might have. It helps you keep the bigger picture. And I know that thinking about telling the story for brands and helping them tell their stories is part of what I love about working with product companies and retailers, because you're inspiring people to perhaps be a little bit more who they are, just like Roger Federer and his Rolex. So how do we enable these brand stories, and how do consumer product companies tell these stories? Well, it's really enabled by orchestration. And perhaps those of you who attended the in-person Henry Stewart events about 4 years ago, my keynote was specifically about orchestration and about telling stories through data and asset orchestration. And so we think about communication and storytelling and bringing together data and what we know about customers. So it's product data, it's the real information that we're collecting about customers. It's the why of the brand. It's being consistent in telling our stories. It's being able to take the lessons we learn from what we mess up and sort of putting all this together, into a brand story, into an appealing format that's well framed. And this is what we're trying to do every day as asset managers. So as we go into DAM Industry Week, one of the things that's just so wonderful about of this week is that you'll see there's a lot of consistency, of course, in how different industries use DAM. But in every single vertical, DAM is foundational. And this is a stack of what I see as the typical orchestration points or integration points for digital asset management in these different industries. Now, obviously, since today's about CPG and retail, I'm not going to go through all of these. But if we focus on that first column, I think about 3 of the biggest challenges and goals that I see CPG companies and retailers trying to do in terms of working together and in terms of the sort of symbiotic relationship they have is you have to link assets to product data. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, how to take assets and link them to the data and then use that intelligently, in all likelihood, getting it out to retailers. Syndication is a word that I probably say 50 times a day because so many of my clients are trying to do that. How do we take the asset? How do we marry it to product data? How do we get it out to the retailer effectively? And there's a lot about packaging as well. Even though we work in an industry that begins with D, digital, so much of what is important to consumer product companies and retailers is really about what's it going to say on the package? What's going to be on the shelf? How is it going to compel someone to buy, whether they're looking at the digital shelf or the physical shelf, to really inspire that purchase by the consumer. So as we think about orchestration, I often like to tie it back to music. And in my keynote a few years ago, I talked specifically about how a large symphony orchestra comes together and how music comes together as an ensemble and how music gets adapted for different situations, just like we have to adapt our content and our data for different channels. And this is really the core of omnichannel strategy is planning centrally, but dispersing and adapting for many of those channels. So system orchestration, which is a lot of the focus of digital asset management for CPG and retail today, is about this arrangement, coordination, the management of these complex computer systems, the middleware, the services, and of course the content and the assets that these systems manage. And we can't really just talk about DAM for CPG and retail anymore. We have to talk about where it fits in. We have to talk about the orchestration. We have to talk about the big picture. We have to talk about marketing technology and the enterprise. So as we consider where does DAM fit in a CPG or a retail enterprise, it's part of a much larger ecosystem. It's part of a very, very connected fabric of ins and outs and throughputs and sources and downstream channels. And this slide alone, I probably use it in every Henry Stewart webinar. It's something that I created with some very bright folks from ICP. And it's something that it can vary from client to client in terms of what goes in these boxes, right? From company to company, from organization to organization. So you need to think about your own ecosystem, how it connects, what should be in these boxes, what are you aggregating, how are you collecting it, and how are you getting it out to the right channels? You even need to think in terms of the flow, the connectivity, and I often say assets as a service. So we've, over the years, often thought of DAM as a destination, as a place where users go, as a URL that you put into your browser and you type in and you go to a place where you can access assets. We have to rethink that completely. Of course, that's important. We still need that place for users to go, for brand managers to go. But we need to think just as much of DAM as an enterprise service to other applications, as a distribution engine, as a place where any application could go to convert a file, to crop a file, to change the codec, to do whatever it might need to be done, and then to use it properly, perhaps personalize it, perhaps target it, etc. PIM is number one in terms of integration points for CPG and retail companies. So thinking about PIM as an aggregator, thinking about PIM as a place where all your product data can come together, and then downstream gets married to the asset, it gets linked to the asset so that it's ready in a package to go out to the consumer. And I often say that this is not a single product solution. It is a connectivity and an integration solution where DAM and PIM and the data has to come together, and great data management practices have to come together. And this is something that our keynote speaker, Doris, coming up, she has done this for so much of her career, and she's going to speak about it in more detail than I have the time to do. So thinking about an integrated product dashboard, thinking about bringing together product imagery, related items, key selling points, even your social pieces of content, all the different content marketing elements into a dashboard for marketers. Thinking also about the physical world, managing a package, managing a shelf talker in a store, all these sort of omni-channel pieces in a centralized marketing hub is where CPGs and retails are aiming as their North Star. And fortunately, I see more and more of you getting there, which is awesome. It is a slow journey, though. It doesn't happen quickly. I think all of our speakers are going to affirm that today. But we are on the path that is the best for telling the story, and that is the most effective and poignant for the consumer. So as I wrap up here, some themes for today: brand storytelling, and intelligent targeted use of assets. It requires intelligent integration. DAM fits into this increasingly complex ecosystem, and that ecosystem varies, by industry vertical. And data orchestration is really vital to the success of the customer experience. So with that, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. If you have any questions about my presentation, there's my contact info, but I'll be available, of course, over the course of the next few hours. If you'd like to send me any questions, please do. So Doris, I had the pleasure of working with Doris many years ago when they when General Mills, her company, selected their digital asset management system. And Doris, I can definitely say, is one of the smartest people I have worked with. So she's a wonderful person to share her knowledge with us today. She is product manager at General Mills, responsible for implementing and supporting digital asset management systems for brands such as Betty Crocker, Pillsbury, Nature Valley, Old El Paso, and many more. And she's got over 30 years of development, project architecture, and analyst experience spanning many different technologies and process. And she's been at General Mills about 8 years, and she's going to share with us her knowledge about her experience. Doris, over to you.
Thanks, Teresa. That was a very warm welcome. I appreciate it. So let me hop on and share my screen. All right, hopefully it's up. Everybody can see. Good morning. Thank you. Welcome to CPG Day at DAM Industry Week. I am excited to be presenting to you today. And I want to talk to you about the challenge of connecting assets to the enterprise. So what does that mean? First, I want to give you just a brief synopsis of General Mills and who we are. We have, in fiscal 2020, we had net sales of 17.6 billion, and our 8 largest brands each generate over $1 billion in annual retail sales. Our brands are enjoyed in over 100 plus global markets throughout the world, and our 38,000 employees worldwide bring passion and creativity to each workday. We have 6 major global platforms. We have cereal, snacks, convenient meals, yogurt, premium ice cream, and of course our pet segment. And you may recognize the sampling of brands each and every time you go to your local retailer, grocery store, or club. So we hope you find these on your shelves in your home. So as I was thinking about how to present this today, something came to mind, and I'm a lover of baseball, and there was a little movie that came out a number of years ago, I don't want to date myself, called Field of Dreams, in which a man from Iowa named Ray Kinsella kept hearing this subliminal message over and over in his head. If you build it, he will come. If you build it, he will come. And so Ray had to discern what that message meant and what he was supposed to do about it. And it turns out that he was getting this message sort of from the baseball gods, if you will. And what they wanted him to do was build a baseball field in the middle of his cornfield on his farm in Iowa. And if he built this, players from the 1919 World Series would come and play baseball, you know, and carry on the game from his cornfield in Iowa. And as I was thinking about this and baseball, I thought there's some analogies that for DAM. If you build it, if you start with the structure, if you start with the platform from DAM and you populate it with all the different types of content and you think about the outcomes like product syndication, your owned media websites, where things might go as you promote your brands, you think about the creative agencies, whether they're internal or external, providing the content within your platform that can be shared and all the things that you can do with it to publish your brand, make it known to the world, to the marketplace, you are building sort of that ball field, if you will, that playing field. And so who will come? Well, it isn't going to be just he, it will be they. And who are the audience? Who are the fans filling the stands? Who are the players who are going to be a part of this game? Well, for General Mills, it might be a number of players or groups or applications or systems. So it might be marketing, it could be your sales team, brand experience. We're going to talk about e-com and product syndication, as Teresa said. That's a very big part of what we do in the digital content world. It could be your corporate relations team, packaging, labeling, creative, content publishers who are pushing out your brand message to your websites, creating those social programs and platforms, generating personalization to gather that consumer into the fold, and service teams who might be responding to questions and thoughts and concerns or comments about the products that your company promotes or serves. So let's head to the ballpark and let's talk about how we engage the enterprise into our DAM. So like any good team, before I can begin to play the game, I sort of have to set the stage. I have to create the things that build my team and allow me to put my team on the field. So the first thing I'm going to do is understand my audience. Who is coming to my DAM platform and how do they speak? What's the lingo? What are the things in terms of taxonomy or metadata that I need to provide to them in order to link a digital piece of asset content to a way for them to search and find and connect the world. Once I understand that, then let's talk about setting the lineup. And this to me means who are the groups within my company who can provide me metadata that's going to allow me to connect things. It might be you need to talk to a data architect. Maybe you've got a data governance group. Maybe you have a master data team. Maybe there are other organizations, groups, or applications within your company that have data to share. And trust me when I tell you, they want to share it with you. They want you to connect because it allows us to all speak the same language. So find out what's available, what types of taxonomies, what data is available for me to consume, and where is it found? Is it something easily accessible? Is it provide the potential for automation? Is it in a database, a service? Where is it at? And who owns it? As I'll talk about in just a little bit, ownership of a taxonomy or data is very important. So I've understood my audience. I kind of know the people I need to connect with. And now it comes down to sort of field maintenance, right? Can I take that data? Can I automate it? Can I turn it on so that every time something changes or is updated or is new, it will automatically flow into my system? This is sort of something you need to consider at both ends. What does the source have available for me to connect with? And what does my platform allow me to do? In worst case scenario, if neither has automation or only automation is available at one end, you have at least found a source for data that you can potentially manually enter or manage within your system. Just like the weather at the ballpark, which might start out sunny and turn to rainy by the 7th inning, remember that change is inevitable. So implementing an enterprise taxonomy is never a once and done, sort of wipe my hands, throw it up in the air and go, cool, I'm done, I don't have to think about it. The enterprise data can always change and new things can always become available. And finally, call-ups and trades. So I've implemented my taxonomy, but you should always be on the lookout for something better or something that's changing, because ultimately that data can improve the user experience. And so as you're making those connections, you want to be sure that you're sort of worming your way into the conversations, making people know that, hey, DAM as a platform, DAM as a service is very interested in being able to use the enterprise taxonomies or data that's available in order to connect my content to deliver it to whomever wants to consume it. So now let's step up to the plate. We had the conversations with those teams. How can I engage with them and who are they so that I know what sorts of things I can get from them? So for us, it really comes down to sort of three large groups. I have my master data team, who is really sort of in control and in charge of things like brand taxonomies, product data, and product category, which is a hierarchy that's sort of an industry standard consumable taxonomy. But I'm also going to look internal to different groups and organizations within the companies who might also have data that I could use. Our current platform supports our national retail organization, and they deliver sort of a best practice portal of how to do retail product displays at companies. And so one of the things that I can get from them are people hierarchies like our sales organization. They also maintain a valid taxonomy of retailers. And not only can my national retail organization use this, but I can also make this available at just the digital asset content level so that people can link campaigns, specific campaigns that they might be looking to deliver to Walmart or Target or Kroger or whoever it might be, and link those retailers to specific assets and make it much more robust for them to use and consume. But don't count out other applications or other processes that might also have taxonomies that you can take advantage of. Betty Crocker and Pillsbury and Old Paso and our brands all have their own brand websites, and a lot of them have recipe content that we deliver automatically using our DAM as part of that construct. And so another way that I could augment the data that I am delivering to them is by introducing the food content taxonomy, which will give our users yet another way that they can consume the data within our system. And then finally for us, product and PIM. And while master data holds the things that are more SAP related, PIM has gone to the effort of making things much more retailer and consumer friendly. And so while the PIM system consumes our product images from the DAM, it's not just a one-way street. I can also get data back for them that enables users to find assets within the system in a much more consumer-friendly way. So I'm going to augment what I have with what PIM has to offer me. So just like the umpire can control the flow of a game, calling balls and strikes, is the strike zone too narrow, too wide, calls can work in both ways to be a plus for one team and a minus for the other. And so you have to think about the use of enterprise metadata or taxonomies in the same way. There are pluses and there are minuses, benefits and concerns that you need to consider. From an automation perspective, this would be a huge win. I no longer have to reach out to someone to find when a new brand is being added, when a product is being created, when a product might be discontinued, because I can pull that data from the source and allow the people at the source to manage that sort of data, and it just flows into my system. Another good benefit is consistency. We all speak the same language. So while John might say potato and Bill might say potato and Sue might say spud, when you implement an enterprise taxonomy, we all call things the same thing and allows us to make assets more findable. You can search on all kinds of terminology that might be rampant throughout your system or out throughout your company, but by implementing one strong taxonomy that everyone can relate to, you now have made things findable within your system. And by using taxonomies that may live outside of master data, like in other groups or organizations or processes, you can also expose new concepts that allow users to find the assets or the collateral that they're looking for. A big benefit of enterprise level taxonomies is ownership. Somebody who loves and cares and manages that taxonomy, make sure that it's up to date, make sure that all of the new type things are managed within the system, and things that are becoming obsolete or discontinued are also clearly called out. And so you as a DAM platform don't have to manage things that should be managed at the source, and ownership can be very, very powerful. Implementing an enterprise taxonomy also can save you time to implementation. So whether you're building a DAM from the ground up or you're looking to improve the DAM platform that you already have up and running, it's a great time saver. And so instead of potentially having conversation after conversation after conversation and getting alignment and what are we going to call it and how's it going to be used, using an enterprise taxonomy can get you from start to finish in 0 to 60 potentially. And being able to use that to quickly implement can also have cost efficiencies in your project. But like any great thing, it sometimes comes with concerns. And just like enterprise level data, there are some things that you should be on the lookout for. Just because master data is a great thing to connect to, just remember that the data might not always be pretty. A lot of master data systems are coming from SAP or SAP-like systems. And if you've ever worked with data or those systems, you know that it can be very abbreviated and abrupt. And just like ownership can be a really good thing, you need to keep in mind that who owns the taxonomy and for what purpose can be something that you have to keep an eye out for, because likely when they make changes, they may not always be done with DAM in mind. So let's take an example from General Mills, and keying off of Teresa's talk about brands, I'm going to talk about brands at General Mills and how we use those to supplement our DAM, not just from a end user perspective, but how we talked about it in terms of PIM and e-commerce and how that allows us to flow data back and forth between systems. So currently today we have what we call our brand hierarchy, and it consists of a franchise, which is, I'm going to use Cheerios as an example, and underneath that live the brands. And Cheerios happens to have 40 different varieties that they provide. And so the franchise acts sort of like a categorization, and underneath that live all my brands. It's great when you use this as filtering within your system, because with the 2 clicks, a user can get to something very, very specific, very granular. So if I want to find very berry Cheerios or very burst Cheerios, 2 clicks will get me to that. Similarly, just like for yellow box Cheerios. But I can also use my brand taxonomy to its fullest potential. And some collateral that you might have might be tagged at the franchise level because it's more ephemeral. It isn't tied to one brand specifically. It can be used across the platform. So I might have recipe images that are tagged for Cheerios. I might have point of sale. My logos and my campaign logos and my icons may also be linked at that higher level and can flow between all the different brands in terms of usage. Along comes change. And so our brand and franchise is currently owned by our finance department. And as you can guess, the finance department is interested in reporting on the financials of the products and the platforms and the brands, and they want to report sales. So currently in our world, they roll all those 40 brands up into a franchise for their reporting process. But they said, you know what, that's really time consuming for us. And so we want to make some changes to that. And so what they did was they eliminated franchise and they turned it into global brand. I'm still sort of talking apples for apples, and it feels much more like a relabeling than a detriment to anything that I'm working with. So that's good. I'm okay with that. But then they said, well, brands as a granular structure are going to go away, and they're going to become just a brand known as Cheerios. Well, as you can guess from the visual, I went from this 40 individual brands with my nice granularity that allows me to do filtering really easy in my DAM. I've now got something called Cheerios, which is not going to be quite as user-friendly. So what do? Just like the manager on the field during a baseball game, as you weigh the situation and the players on the field, you have some decisions to make. What to do? Well, I could do nothing. I could leave the implementation as I currently have it, using brand and franchise in their current state. But I run some risks of doing that. I run the risk of obsolescence. I'm likely no longer getting updates. So when a new brand or franchise is introduced, I'm going to miss out on that. And that means I'm not going to have connected assets. And at some point, this is likely going to be decommissioned. And then I'm sort of back to square one. So my next option is, well, I could attempt to influence the owner to make changes to this. You know, as you roll out global brand and consumer brand, as it's called, maybe I can plead my case, explain to them how DAM is using this to drive filtering within its navigational structure, and it allows me to tie things together. At which point that owner might say, hey, that's great, but we're not interested in maintaining something that's just going to be used for the DAM. You could, however, manage this on your own, which is always a possibility. But when you're working in a company that might have hundreds or thousands of brands, the management of doing this from a manual perspective really becomes quite daunting. Do you have enough resources? Do you have the appropriate resources? Do you know where the data is coming from? How are you going to keep it up to date? And not only up to date, but in a timely fashion. So you need to think about, from a manager of their DAM platform, what's the right answer? How do I move ahead? How do I keep things connected, even in the new structure? Well, for us, it's time to call up the reliever. And while your starting pitcher has certain qualities that the manager looks at in terms of the opponent and says, this is the guy for the game, at some point, his performance might not be where the coach or the manager wants it. And so he's going to put in a reliever that has slightly different characteristics or attributes. And how does that play into DAM? Well, it's sort of the same thing. I'm going to sacrifice something or have some takeaways, but in the end, I might gain something different, or at a minimum, maintain my structure. So what did I lose in this case? Well, for certain, I lost a level of granularity. That 2 clicks is going to become something else, because my brand is now rolled into something larger. For sure, I'm likely going to have to retrain my users to understand the changes that are being implemented in the brand and the global brand. And while training is never a bad thing, for sure, you are going to have to set the stage for them so you don't engage frustration on their part. And I'm going to have to introduce a new taxonomy that we have available in our product category, but it isn't quite as intuitive as just brand and franchise. It's because it's based on an industry standard nomenclature and taxonomy, and not something specific to General Mills. So it may take them a while to get used to the new nomenclature in that taxonomy. But all is not lost. The game is not over. We still have a few outs to go. So what have I gained, or at a minimum maintained as part of this change? Well, for sure, I still have an owner of the taxonomy, and that's very important because I still have someone who's going to love and care for it, make sure that updates are happening appropriately, new products and new brands are flowing in and out of it. So I still have that as a feature. I can continue to automate, and even though the actual source of the data may have changed from a database to maybe something in the data lake or in the cloud, I still have a way of automating that into my system. And I did gain something. I gained some incremental improvements that now international brands have become a part of the global brand structure. Whereas before, as a DAM platform, I had to maintain that manually, look for sources of data to tell me when something is changed or updated, or when new international brands have come to fruition. So even though I may have to do a small subset of something manually because they aren't part of our systems, I've gained much more than I've lost in terms of the data that is now available to me. And also they introduced a new attribute called consumer brand name, which is a little bit more user-friendly and more marketing speak type brand names. So the call up, let's look at an example of product data. So for General Mills, we get our product data from our master data team, and it's very SAP-like. In fact, it comes from SAP, and we gather certain attributes from that to implement into our DAM to help users connect and find data. And so these products and packages are linked with this data, and this allows us to share across our e-com platforms, make it available for product syndication. And we're now also rolling this feature out to our brand sites to automatically get the product images to their sites in a very current and methodical manner. So, like I said, this is not always user-friendly, and I get some key things from it, like a product description, some sort of identifiers that make the product unique so that when my systems or my people are looking for it, they have a way to identify. And this could include things like UPCs or SKUs or barcodes or whatever you call it within your own internal organization. How can I make it better, right? SAP data is a little funky and it's not always nice. So I can implement some additional data and augment my product data from my PIM platform. It should be an even exchange. They get images from me based on data that I provide to them. And in turn, when they are syndicating products and make it available to retailers, I can in turn now take advantage of that data to help users in the system who are looking for assets and collateral in a different way for other purposes. So talk to your PIM team or your master data team or whoever is managing your PIM platform and ask them what attributes are available. And think about, can it improve the data that I already have? Can it, in the end, improve the end result for my end user, improve their experience? So here's an example of augmenting the product data. I have a field from my master data team called product description. And as you can see, it's very SAP-ish like, lots of abbreviations, some words I'm not even really sure what they mean. And if I were a marketer coming to the system and I searched Nature Valley, might I get that product? I might. You can do things like make Nature Valley NV, add synonyms if your platform allows for that type of thing in its search capabilities. But again, if you're managing hundreds of products or thousands of products or all kinds of services, adding a synonym every time a new product or brand is introduced could probably seem very unwieldy to manage. So this is where you go to your PIM team and you say, tell me an attribute that is more user-friendly. And from them, I get product name. And as you can see, it's much more human speak, right? Nature Valley, sweet and salty, nut, dark chocolate, peanut, and almond granola at 12 count is something that I, as an end user, can relate to. And as I was talking about, reaching out to other groups, not just your master data team, not just your PIM teams, but organizations or applications or systems within your own company that can help you augment the data and not just make it searchable and findable, but allow for different concepts for users to reach out and connect. All of our sites, Betty Crocker, Pillsbury, etc., a lot of them have recipe content. And so we link the recipe image to its recipe data. So I can do things like search for its title, look for its number, get its GUID, and this connectivity allows my platforms on the back end to consume this data because we've linked it together with data that defines each of these together. But I can do more, because as part of this process, where we tag recipes with specific nomenclature that allows it to do things on browse pages through their CMS, I can also incorporate this metadata into my platform and allow users to use different concepts that they could use for personalization, that they could use for social platforms, that they could use for cookbooks, or whatever the use case might be. And this allows me to search and aggregate my content in a different way. I could look for things by their flavor profile. I could say I want all the images that are relative to Halloween. And if that's not contained within the data I've made available from my recipe system, I now have another way to make things findable within the system for them. I can also include general marketing themes that may be the topic of the day or something they're trying to promote. And so as these things change and morph, I make my data presentable and findable in a different way by using the taxonomy that everyone in that process, application area or business owner area, can relate to. So just like in the movie, go the distance. Let enterprise data help you connect assets to turn your dam into a field of dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. That was great. We've got a couple of minutes for some questions, and there was a lot of questions that came in during your session. So fortunately, some of them that were asked earlier, you answered later on. So that's a good
Excellent.
thing. So there was one question that several people voted for, that people were interested in knowing if you have a taxonomist in your organization, and if so, is it a role in itself? If not, sort of who plays it, and is it a business or is it an IT function?
Yeah, we no longer have a taxonomist at General Mills. I guess if I were to call it, I play that role, whether I should or shouldn't, but I have worked with taxonomists in the past. And for our food content, we went through a major project in which we did engage a consultant taxonomist to help us. So when I have questions, if I'm unsure about things, I reach out to that person for help. My goal would be to have someone on board from sort of a more of a business perspective who could play that role of interacting with the business, understanding the nomenclature, understanding the lingo, the talk, right? And that person could sort of maintain that within the DAM system. Right now, it's sort of me playing that role.
And so I'm curious, how does that relate to what the MDM team is doing? So you have an MDM group, but they must be much more data oriented and less sort of user centric. Is that the issue there?
Yeah, true. They're much more data centric and much more, I would say, process oriented. So, like I said, the finance team owning the brand taxonomy is great for them. They don't always keep us in mind. And so you have to work through not just the use case of, hey, I want to use this, which they're all very excited about, but sometimes their purpose is very different than what your purpose is. And so you have to have a lot of conversations and sort of stay in the loop with them to know what they're doing and how you can implement that.
Sure. Someone wanted to know if you use an MRM, or if there's an MRM, which for those of you who don't know, marketing resource management system, any components that you're using either within your DAM or externally to that?
We have a module. We're not currently using it. We are looking to implement it soon, but not using it at the current time.
Okay. There was some requests for examples of data that you move, or that the DAM consumes from the PIM. I think you showed that on your last slide pretty extensively, although 6 people were interested in that. so I think that was good. How did you, let me sort of turn that question another way. How did you make the decision, or what was the process that you went through to make the decision on what you were going to have the DAM consume from the PIM?
Yeah, so we started with sort of master data, right? And we said, these are the elements of master data related to product that would allow a user, so 2 cases, that allow an end user to come into the system and find something. And to be honest, most people search by SKUs or barcodes or UPCs. And so that was very relevant. But using that SKU or barcode or UPC also allows me to make those same assets available to my PIM or my ecom systems. And so we sort of started with the basics. What's the minimum data that allows me to define a product within its digital content, that allows me to do things like link it to systems downstream. Then sort of once we established our PIM and stood it up and they made all kinds of different attributes available, then the conversation turned to, hey, what do you guys have that I can take advantage of that helps maybe more potentially end users to find what they're looking for? And so we looked through their list of their attributes, and they are many, and sort of determined what makes the system better. And we went back to sort of those end user groups and said, hey, what attributes that are in the system that are in PIM would make it easier for you to find things? And so we sort of had this alignment of what things we were going to use and what things improved their end user experience.
Great. Okay, that's all we have time for. So if you'd like to speak more with Doris, or if you'd like to hear more about her work, you can go to the Networking Lounge, which is one of the links in your navigation, and you can join the Meet the Speaker Roundtable, where the conversation will continue. So up next, we've got Sherdian doing a tech lab, and they're very smart folks. I can vouch for that, which is the do's and don'ts of a retail digital supply chain. So please go check that out. And also make sure that you go into the Networking Lounge, and as well as the competitions tab, where you can win lots of cool free stuff. So thanks again to Doris for that very educational and useful session. And we'll see you in the next session. Thanks, everyone.